When external demand drops, the body does not immediately relax into ease. Often, the opposite happens. Sensation becomes louder, restlessness appears, unease, irritation, or a vague anxiety surfaces in the quiet. This moment is frequently misunderstood. The nervous system has been organized around movement, responsiveness, and readiness. When pressure or demand is present, attention is oriented outward. Sensation is buffered by action. But when the environment becomes calm, the system no longer needs to track urgency. What was previously held in the background comes forward. This is not a problem, it is information. Discomfort in calm does not mean something is wrong. It does not mean you are failing at rest. And it does not mean the system needs to be redirected or improved. It simply means sensation is returning to awareness now that there is space to feel it. For many systems, calm removes the familiar signals that once provided orientation. Without deadlines, stimulation, or demand, the body is left alone with itself. That contact can feel unfamiliar, even threatening. Not because calm is unsafe, but because it is untrained. The impulse that follows is predictable. Do something, fix something, think something through, decide what's next. This impulse often masquerades as clarity or responsibility, but it is usually regulation. Action restores a familiar internal state. Movement reduces sensation. Thinking creates distance. The system feels steadier again, not because integration has occurred, but because contact has been interrupted. Discomfort in this context is not a call to act. It is a sign that the system is close enough to itself to register sensation again. What is being felt now was often present before, but overridden by momentum. Calm removes the distraction. The body is catching up to itself. This stage is easily mislabeled as regression. People assume that if rest brings agitation, something has gone wrong. But nervous systems do not reorganize through insight alone. They reorganize through exposure, gradual, non-catastrophic contact with states that were once avoided or bypassed. Feeling unsettled in stillness is not evidence that calm is harmful. It is evidence that calm is new. The body does not interpret safety through explanation. It interprets safety through lived experience. In this moment, the system is gathering data. What happens if nothing happens? What happens if there is no response? What happens if sensation is allowed without interruption? These questions are not answered cognitively. They are answered by staying. When discomfort arises in calm, it is not asking for intervention. It is asking for time. The system is testing whether it can remain present without mobilizing, whether sensation can rise and fall without being managed, whether quiet leads to threat or simply to sensation passing through. Nothing needs to be corrected here. Nothing needs to be resolved. This is the beginning of integration. Sensation returning to awareness in the absence of demand. The task is not to make it comfortable. The task is to not turn it into movement too quickly. Calm does not become safe by being explained. It becomes safe by being experienced, repeatedly, without being escaped.
There is a particular moment that arrives as the system begins to settle. It is quiet, but not peaceful. The edges soften slightly, yet something inside becomes alert. This is often when the urge to act appears. The mind starts scanning. Ideas surface. Decisions feel suddenly important. There is a pull to move forward, to clarify direction, to fix what feels unresolved, to regain momentum. This impulse is rarely random. It tends to arise precisely when the nervous system has entered a phase of reorganization. When settling begins, familiar forms of regulation drop away. The system is no longer held together by urgency, problem-solving, or motion. That loss of structure can feel destabilizing. Action promises orientation. It reestablishes a known internal pattern. From the outside, It can look like productivity or readiness. From the inside, it often functions as interruption. Integration requires continuity of state. The nervous system needs time in a new configuration for changes to consolidate. But action, especially decisive or outcome-oriented action, pulls the system back into previously learned patterns of stabilization. The body recognizes movement. It recognizes effort. It recognizes direction. These are familiar signals. They bring coherence quickly, but by reactivating older strategies, rather than allowing the new state to complete itself. This is why action taken too early can feel strangely unsatisfying. Things move forward, yet something feels incomplete. The system resumes functioning, but deeper reorganization stalls. The body returns to what it knows how to do, not what it was in the process of learning. The impulse to act is strongest when the system is most vulnerable to interruption, not because something is wrong, but because old pathways are losing dominance. Action restores them. Pausing at this stage is not passive. It is protective. The nervous system reorganizes beneath conscious awareness. Patterns unwind. Orienting responses complete. Tension resolves in subtle, non-linear ways. These processes do not respond to instruction. They require uninterrupted time in a settled state. Movement too early cuts this short. The system learns a different lesson, that calm is temporary and action is required to stabilize. Over time, this reinforces dependence on motion. Stillness never becomes trustworthy because it is never allowed to finish what it begins. Pausing allows the nervous system to discover something new. That settling does not collapse. That disorientation passes. That nothing needs to be done for stability to return. This is not about forcing stillness or resisting impulse. It is about recognizing timing. There is a difference between action that emerges from an integrated state and action that interrupts integration to relieve discomfort. The latter often feels urgent. The former feels accurate. When the system is reorganizing, the most supportive response is often non-interference, letting sensation move, letting uncertainty exist, letting the body complete cycles previously overridden by speed or demand. Pausing here does not delay progress. It prevents repetition. Action will still be available later. Decisions will still arise. But when integration is allowed to complete, action no longer needs to stabilize the system. It can simply express it. This is the difference between movement as regulation and movement as response. And it begins by not moving too soon.
Integration is often misunderstood as an active process, something to manage, something to complete, something to make happen through effort, insight, or technique. But integration does not respond to force. When the nervous system is reorganizing, there is no task to perform and no problem to solve. What is occurring is not a deficit that requires correction, but a process that requires permission. The body carries unfinished patterns, responses that were interrupted, sensations that were overridden, adaptations formed in the presence of pressure. These patterns do not resolve through explanation or intention. They resolve when conditions allow them to complete. Integration is the name we give to that completion. This is why trying to fix what arises during calm so often prolongs it. The moment discomfort appears, the mind looks for a cause, a reason, a strategy. But the body is not asking for interpretation. It is allowing something previously held at bay to move again. Intervening too quickly teaches the system that sensation itself is unsafe. That discomfort must be removed. That stability depends on control. Over time, this creates a reliance on action for regulation. Movement becomes the primary way the system maintains coherence. Stillness never earns trust because it is never allowed to finish what it begins. When nothing is fixed, something else becomes possible. The nervous system begins to discover that sensation can arise without consequence. That unease does not escalate indefinitely. That tension can resolve on its own without being managed. These discoveries are not intellectual. They are learned through direct experience. Integration happens beneath thought. Subtle shifts occur in posture, breath, orientation, and tone. Muscles release in ways that cannot be predicted. Attention widens. Sensation reorganizes. None of this requires direction. In fact, direction often interrupts it. The desire to fix is understandable. It often comes from care, from a wish to support the process. But support in this context looks like non-interference. Allowing the body to resolve itself without instruction is not neglect. It is trust in an intelligence that operates below conscious control. When intervention pauses, the system learns something essential. That stability does not depend on doing. That coherence can arise on its own. This is not always comfortable. There may be periods of ambiguity, restlessness, or uncertainty. These states are transitional. They signal movement beneath the surface, not failure. Fixing cuts through these transitions too quickly. It replaces reorganization with relief. Nothing needs to be fixed because nothing is broken. What is present is a system updating itself, releasing patterns that were once necessary but are no longer required. This takes time, it takes repetition, and it takes the absence of pressure to resolve. Integration is not achieved by improving the moment. It is achieved by staying with it long enough for the body to complete what it already knows how to do. The paradox is simple. The more the system is left alone, the more it reorganizes. The less it is directed, the more coherent it becomes. Nothing needs to be added, nothing needs to be removed. Integration occurs when the urge to intervene softens, and the body is finally allowed to finish its own sentences.
Calm does not become safe because it is understood. It becomes safe because it is lived. Insight can explain why stillness matters. It can describe nervous system patterns and name what is happening. But explanation does not train the body. The nervous system does not reorganize in response to meaning. It reorganizes in response to experience. This is why calm can remain uncomfortable long after it makes sense. The body learns safety the same way it learned threat, through repetition, through exposure that does not overwhelm, through contact that ends without consequence. Each time stillness is entered and nothing harmful follows, the system updates. At first, calm may feel thin, unstable, easily disrupted. The system remains alert, watching for what comes next. This vigilance is not a mistake. It is how learning happens. Stillness is not trusted because it has not yet been tested. Each pause offers that test, not as an exercise, not as a practice to perfect, but as a simple return to contact. Sensation arises, urges come and go, nothing is done about them, and eventually they pass. This sequence matters. When calm is interrupted too soon, the system never receives the ending it needs. It does not learn that settling resolves itself. It only learns that stillness must be escaped in order to stay regulated. Repetition without interruption changes this. The body begins to register that quiet does not lead to collapse, that uncertainty does not require immediate response, that presence can be maintained without effort. These learnings accumulate slowly below conscious awareness. There is no single moment when calm becomes safe. There is no insight that completes the process. Safety emerges as a byproduct of familiarity. The nervous system stops bracing because it has stopped being surprised. Each time settling is allowed to run its course, the system recalibrates its expectations. What once felt threatening becomes neutral. What once required management becomes tolerable. Eventually, it becomes ordinary. Calm stabilizes not when it feels pleasant, but when it no longer demands attention. This is why forcing relaxation often backfires. Effort adds pressure. Control introduces performance. The system learns that calm requires work, which reinforces the very patterns it is meant to soften. Safety and stillness is learned through staying, not through trying. The repetition is subtle. It does not look dramatic. Often it feels like nothing is happening. But beneath that apparent nothing, the nervous system is rewriting its assumptions. This process cannot be rushed. It cannot be optimized. It cannot be completed through understanding alone. Calm becomes safe because the body has survived it again and again without interruption. Eventually, the system stops asking whether it needs to move. The question dissolves. Stillness no longer needs justification or explanation. It becomes another state the body knows how to inhabit. And when calm no longer feels like an event, it no longer needs to be managed. At that point, silence does not require instruction. It only needs space.